As Donald Trump responded to the news that he would finally experience consequences for his actions with unsubstantiated claims about President Biden, his administration, and his family, Biden has stayed out of the fray. I had a chance to talk with Biden-Harris campaign manager Julie Chavez Rodriguez for her first interview since taking control of the campaign. And I asked her about the president's re-election strategy.
It's about making sure that we are really, talking to the American people about the issues that matter most. We know that these court cases will continue to move forward and they'll take their course of action. But for us, again, it's really making sure that we're talking to voters about, lowering prescription drug costs, lowering energy costs, really focused on what matters most to them right now, and continuing to, again, ensure that they understand the choice that's in front of them and the clear contrast of the kind of, extremism that we're seeing from Trump, from DeSantis, from sort of the entire field, versus, what we're delivering right now for the American people and really investing in our communities.
You can catch more of my exclusive interview with Julie Chavez Rodriguez tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, American Voices, right here on MSNBC. For more on how President Biden should campaign against an indicted opponent, let's bring in award-winning author, professor of African-American Studies at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude. David Jolly is also back. Eddie, so that question that I posed to her there was about the fact that they will be campaigning against a thrice indicted, twice impeached former president. And you hear, Eddie, sort of the hard pivot to we're going to be talking about Bidenomics. We're going to be talking about extremism, competence versus chaos. I wonder what you make of the decision not to engage on the Trump indictment.
So I don't think they should engage the indictment. You're not running against an indicted a candidate. What you're running for is democracy. And this is my worry. We can't treat this as if it's a normal political presidential season. We haven't seen this kind of campaign since, in my view, 1860, the campaign of Abraham Lincoln versus John Breckinridge. The stakes are that high. The other side sees it as existential. And so to respond to those who are defending it, in their view, the very soul of the country by turning to bread and butter issues, right? It's not sufficient. You don't, how can I put this, Alicia? You don't respond to a superstorm in the same way that you would respond to a regular storm. So you're not running against indictment, you're running for democracy. And I hope they understand the urgency of that. And the president has to make that case clearly, at least to me.
There is the urgency around democracy, Eddie, and there's the urgency around the unique nature of Donald Trump. I'm sure you saw the Washington Post reporting that former President Obama expressed concerns to President Biden over Trump's political strength, writing, quote, former President Barack Obama at a private lunch with President Biden voiced concern about Donald Trump's political strengths, including an intensely loyal following, a Trump-friendly conservative media ecosystem, and a polarized country, underlining his worry that Trump could be a more formidable candidate than many Democrats realize. I wonder if you think, Eddie, the Democrats are adequately concerned specifically about Trump's candidacy.
I think they're worried. I don't know if it's adequate, but I know that they're worried. As I said earlier, I think we have to understand the existential threat to the polity, the existential threat that he represents. And in that context, we need extraordinary political leadership. We need political leadership to incite a kind of response, an ethic of responsibility on the part of the citizenry. The contrast has to be made in relation to policy. But what we're facing, right, is the very fate of the country. And I think that has to be expressed very clearly and forcefully, not just simply extremism versus competence and the like, chaos versus competence and the like, right? The very fate of the country is at stake, and that's not hyperbole.
Right. I mean, of course, David, I agree in the existential threat that Eddie lays out there. I also think for the Biden campaign, there's sort of this immediate challenge, which is they have an actual record to run on, right? In a normal environment, they would talk about job growth. They would talk about historic investments in infrastructure. Even just on that piece, there is a clear disconnect between what this administration has done and what voters are giving them credit for. And that, it seems to me, they know they have to address that core piece before they move on to everything else.
They do. And look, Joe Biden needs to address all of it. And I think Eddie's point is right. Yours is as well. This is an election unlike any other where democracy's on the line. But to speak in theory doesn't always communicate directly with voters. And the best candidates in American history are the ones that can effectively communicate. So I think there's an opportunity to achieve that nuance by suggesting the contrast is this. When entrusted with the power that the American people would give a president, what did Donald Trump choose to do with it? He's promising to use his power for retribution. He's promised to use it to appoint people that will seek revenge. When he had it, he used it to ultimately engage in behavior that has left him now charged with allegedly trying to disenfranchise voters. That's how Donald Trump used the power the American people gave him. For Joe Biden, when the American people gave him power, he set about to lift up the economy for all people, to create ladders of opportunity in industry and education and healthcare and in labor, and work on behalf of a country that was struggling coming out of COVID. And on matters of criminal justice, even when it came to his own child, he stayed out of the criminal justice system and said, I'll let justice work its way. The contrast there between true American leadership in Joe Biden and selfish leadership of Donald Trump is a fairly easy one to make. It presents the question of democracy and the future of democracy, but it does so in a way that is very digestible for an American public and voter that ultimately has a contrast between two candidates next November.